He was not born strong, not even close. Before the world knew him as the man who ran through pain, broke human limits, and repeated the words, "Stay hard," like a battle cry. David Goggins was someone completely different, someone most people would never associate with discipline, strength, or greatness. He was overweight. He was exhausted. He was stuck in a life that felt like it was slowly collapsing around him. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go to a job that drained him, come back home tired, frustrated, and disappointed in himself, and then repeat it again. There was no inspiration in his life at that point, no clear direction, no big dream guiding him forward, just survival. But the most important part of his story isn't where he started. It's what happened when he finally looked at himself honestly. One day, standing in front of a mirror, he saw something he couldn't ignore anymore. Not just a tired man, not just an overweight body, but a life that was slipping away with every excuse he made. And in that moment, something inside him snapped, not dramatically, not loudly, but quietly and permanently. He realized something that would later define his entire philosophy. No one was coming to save him. No motivation, no miracle, no perfect opportunity. If his life was going to change, it would have to be him. And that realization didn't feel inspiring at first. It felt heavy, almost painful. Because once you accept that truth, you also accept responsibility for everything. From that moment on, he stopped waiting. He didn't suddenly become strong. He didn't suddenly become disciplined. What changed first was his decision. And that decision was simple, but brutal. He was going to rebuild himself from nothing. The beginning was not beautiful. He struggled just to exercise. Running a short distance felt like punishment. His body resisted every step. His mind told him to stop constantly. There were days where quitting would have been easier, days where nobody would have blamed him for going back to his old life. But he didn't. He started doing things that most people avoid: discomfort, pain, exhaustion. Not because he enjoyed it, but because he understood something very few people accept: growth does not happen in comfort. At first, progress was slow, almost invisible, but underneath that slow progress, something deeper was forming: mental toughness, the kind that does not appear in a day or a week. The kind that is built through repetition, through failure, and through choosing to continue when everything in you says, "Stop." He began pushing himself further. Longer runs, harder workouts, more discipline, less excuses, and every time he wanted to quit, he would remind himself of the same truth: if he stopped now, nothing would change. His old life would still be waiting for him. So he kept going. But transformation is never a straight line. There were setbacks. There were moments where progress seemed to disappear. Times when exhaustion caught up with him. Times when he questioned whether all of this effort was even worth it. Because when you are changing your life from the ground up, doubt is not something you avoid. It is something you face repeatedly. What made him different was not that he never doubted himself. It was that he refused to obey those doubts. He learned to separate feeling from action. He might feel weak, but he would still act strong. He might feel tired, but he would still move. He began to understand that feelings are temporary, but decisions shape identity. Slowly, his body started to change. He lost weight. His stamina improved. But something even more important was happening beneath the surface. His identity was shifting. He was no longer the man who gave up easily. He was becoming someone else entirely. This is where most people stop their transformation stories: at the physical change, at the visible success. But for him, that was only the beginning. Because once he entered the world of extreme discipline, he realized there were levels most people never reach. He eventually pushed himself into the most demanding environments imaginable. One of them was becoming a Navy SEAL, The training for it is not normal. It is designed to break people down physically, mentally, emotionally. Sleep deprivation, constant pressure, cold water, endless physical exhaustion. The goal is simple: eliminate everyone who is not absolutely committed. Most people quit. He didn't. But even after surviving that, he didn't stop. That's the part most people misunderstand. For him, survival was not the goal. Growth was. He started running ultra-endurance races, distances so extreme that most people cannot even imagine finishing them. 50 miles, 100 miles, more. And during those races, something interesting happened. Pain stopped being a warning signal. It became familiar. At some point, your mind starts to realize that pain is not the enemy. It is just information. It tells you where your limits are, but limits, he discovered, are not fixed. They move. Every time he hit a wall, he pushed beyond it. Every time his body said stop, he learned to go a little further. Not because it was easy, but because he trained his mind to refuse surrender. This is where his philosophy became clear. You are not as tired as you think. You are not as weak as you feel. You are simply more comfortable quitting than continuing. And once you understand that, everything changes. He often describes something called the 40% rule. The idea that when your mind tells you you are done, you are actually only at 40% of your real capacity. The rest is hidden behind mental barriers, fear, and discomfort. Most people never reach it because they stop too early. But he trained himself to stay in that uncomfortable zone longer than anyone else. Not by avoiding pain, but by accepting it. Over time, this became his identity. He was no longer just someone who exercised or trained. He became someone who actively sought difficulty because he understood something most people avoid understanding. Comfort slowly destroys potential. But his journey was not just physical. The mental side was even more important. He had to face the voice in his head that constantly tried to protect him. The voice that said, "You've done enough. You deserve a break. This is too hard." Instead of listening to it, he began to challenge it. Every time that voice appeared, he responded with action. Not debate, not negotiation. Action. This is where real discipline is born. Not in motivation, but in repetition against resistance. Over the years, this became automatic. He no longer needed inspiration to train. He no longer needed emotional energy to push himself. It became part of who he was. And eventually, he began sharing this mindset with the world. People were drawn to him not because his life was easy, but because it was brutally honest. He didn't sell comfort. He didn't promise shortcuts. He spoke about suffering, struggle, and accountability. And that message hit people differently. Because deep down, everyone knows they are capable of more than they are currently doing. But most people don't want to face that truth. His message removes excuses. It forces reflection. It creates discomfort in the listener. But that discomfort is the point. Because growth does not happen in comfort zones. It happens when you are forced to confront yourself. Today, his life is not about proving anything to others. It is about maintaining a standard he built through years of repetition, pain, and discipline. He still trains, he still pushes himself, not because he has to, but because he knows what happens when he stops challenging himself. The mind becomes soft again, and that is something he refuses to allow. His story is not about talent. It is not about luck. It is not about being special. It is about a decision made in a mirror by someone who refused to stay the same. And that is the real message behind everything he says. You do not need perfect conditions to change your life. You need a decision and the willingness to suffer through the process of becoming someone stronger than you were yesterday. Because in the end, the truth is simple. You are not limited by what you can do. You are limited by what you are willing to endure. and that is why he still says it over and over again. Stay hard.